Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome tonight, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
We are back covering the Champions League, and we'll also preview match week 14 of the Premier League. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at House of underscore Footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But yeah, let's get straight into some of the action. And of course, we're going to have to start off with Group F. Mac, this game was very one-sided if you look at the stats. Newcastle's team made up of essentially um, the starting 11 was the main guys, and then the subs were just made up of whoever else they could put together against a PSG team that had a lot of firepower in terms of names, but really couldn't make it happen until the very end, of course. But what were your takes overall in this game, Mac?
This definitely felt like it felt very stereotypical of what kind of an Englishman would expect of an old game, kind of a smash and grab performance up until the 96th minute for Newcastle, where they got their goal early. It was a goalkeeping error. They managed to get themselves a lead, and they kind of just stuck back and tried to absorb as much pressure as possible. PSG had 73% possession of the ball throughout the game, over 30 shots. I think only 6 or 7 were on target. You're talking about an absolute domination on the ball. If you break down even the clear-cut opportunities of expected goals, PSG were much further ahead. So they were not just creating kind of half chances with all those shots. Their expected goals of 4.4. So it really felt like it was just them continuously missing golden opportunities again and again and again and again. Nick Pope making some phenomenal saves as well as be able to keep Newcastle in the lead until, unfortunately, the straw that breaks the camel's back, of course, is our lovely best friend VAR. It's a little bit tough on Newcastle, I feel, from this performance. So I think their game plan was spot on. They knew what they needed to do. Eddie Howe and his boys, considering all the injuries, the suspensions, kind of their own mistakes on that end, you have to give them their flowers and give them a lot of credit for this level of performance. However, the one slice of luck that's kind of been hampering some teams across the world of football, and of course, everyone has to deal with VAR equally, so it's not just them, of course, puts them in a tough position. And it's unfortunate to see, but sometimes I guess that's how the cookie crumbles. And to be honest,
Okay.
If you want to pitch me whole as an Arsenal fan, hey, they get their kickback. It happens.
Correct. We can definitely get into VAR at towards the end of this game because, of course, that's when the controversy took place. But to start off, PSG Gio could have gone 2-0 up inside 10 minutes. And to start off, they looked like they were gonna just come in and dominate chances, possession, as Mac mentioned, but it didn't look like they were. For all the star names I have, it didn't look like they were ever really convincing enough. I don't know. It feels like they're missing that sort of out and out proven striker.
Right.
Whereas Mbappe, even though he had his chances, Dembele had his chances, it didn't feel like they were up to standard. What were your takes on that part?
No, I agree. I think yes, they are very lethal on the wings, but it's down the middle that they struggle with. And I think even when they had Mbappe, when they had Dembele going, I think a lot of Newcastle's success came from just their overall aggressiveness and just the style of play from the Prem that you go into every challenge very hard, and they're very aggressive on the ball as well, or more so aggressive when they don't have the ball. So I think that really swayed in their favor, and you saw it. The tackles, those sliding challenges by Bruno Guimaraes, to block shots and everything like that. That's the type of intensity that sometimes playing in a league like France doesn't bring. So I think Newcastle were hitting the spots all correct in terms of the intensity of the game. They definitely were the aggressors. Again, like Max said, it was unfortunate that VAR had to step in and kind of take it away from their grasp, because I do genuinely believe that they deserve this win. They toughed it out for a majority of the game. But yeah, again, unfortunate. Everybody does suffer from VAR. But yeah, there is, like you said, as big as a club and big of the names that PSG do have, they're still lacking a lot, and one of those things is, apart from the midfield, is a striker.
Yeah, just quickly to mention, of course, the smash and grab that Mac was referring to was the Donnarumma mistake, and he's been and he will be eventually one of the best keepers in the world for probably the next decade. But he does have a couple mistakes in him. I think we've seen some, especially high profile ones, recently, and I do remember watching some highlights recently. He had one in Liga as well. Donnarumma, the mistake was essentially Almiron's shot. He's not able to do enough, and Isaac puts in the rebound. And then from there, PSG are all offensive. Newcastle sat back until, of course, let's talk about it now. The controversial penalty kick, which a lot of people are saying, I guess the way they interpret it is if the ball goes off of a player's body and then onto the hand, it shouldn't be called a penalty kick because they have no control of that. And so, Mac, I guess to throw it to you first, what were your takes on that penalty decision that was made at the end of the game? 90, I think 90 minutes plus four in added time there. What were your thoughts?
Absolutely not a penalty. I think that's for me. It's a clear miss in terms of the referee. Where if you go back on the monitor, you look back at kind of his first viewpoint is when the ball's already made contact with the hand, so probably leads thought versus showing kind of the full play from the beginning where it comes off his chest initially. Something very similar happened even in the game against Arsenal versus Lens, where I think it was Kai Havertz. What ended up happening was the ball ended up coming off of his thigh, then hanging his hand. VAR reviewed it, no penalty call. So a near identical situation inside the box of something like that happening where it's so close, where there's no intention and it's in a natural position. So for me, it's very unfortunate for Liverpool to kind of have that call go against him and for Newcastle. So I think that was a clear and obvious error on VAR end. I think for me, what even frustrates me more on some ways in terms of how Champions League does it. I don't know if you guys notice it as well. When you're watching these decisions, the actual replay comes like a minute into like a minute after. So we have to sit there and listen to what the commentators are thinking is happening versus in the Prem, the VAR replay comes immediately. We see the replays right away. That delay creates so much shroud of mystery where then we're like, oh yeah, it's obvious the referee's made a quick decision. They've already moved past it. So it feels so quick and a little bit less drawn out. But just that but the problem with that is when it's a quick decision like this, and it feels like that, it definitely clouds, I feel like, kind of spectators' judgment of what it could potentially be. Because at the end of the day, for me, again, this was a clear mistake. There's no way that should have been a penalty. I do want to touch on, though, quickly in terms of what you mentioned earlier, though, in terms of lack of quality. Because there's been a great shift from last year's PSG to this year's PSG. They have really moved away from like Galactico style in terms of having big names. That's why I saw Ramos, you saw Neymar, you see Messi leave. And instead of replacing them with higher end, I would say level talent, they've gone more of the youth route, trying to build from kind of the bottom up. The problem with that is you're going to have more inconsistencies because with younger players, they're not as kind of fit into what they need to do to be as successful, as consistent. A key player, I don't mean to call him out individually, if it really highlights that it is Barcola. That's the winger that came on for Kolo Muani, who missed several key chances. If that's Neymar or Messi, they probably bagged two of those goals. Let's be honest here. It just is what it is. But that's a 21-year-old in a very, very tight situation, playing at home. He's a French international as well. It's a tough situation where he probably doesn't have kind of the salt in his teeth to be able to kind of grit through that moment and still be able to clutch up. So a little bit rough there. Again, I do like the long-term approach, but unfortunately it's going to come with these, let's say, hurdles along the way. So PSG should have won the game, but they kind of did it to themselves why they didn't, and they got bailed out by, I would say, an incorrect call.
Yeah, and I guess at the moment I was kind of making fun of it, saying, of course, this game being played out by two teams that have unlimited amounts of money. It just happened to be the PSG owner who put in the higher bid to get that penalty at the last minute. But Gio, what were your takes on that decision call? Do you agree with Mac there that it was harsh? It was a penalty, given the fact that it was off the player's body first and then onto the hand.
100% harsh. I think Newcastle will feel hard done by that. Again, it already touched another part of his body. The intentions are very clear. You know, it wasn't. The hand wasn't in an unnatural position. I don't think. So for them to call that in a game where they could have really almost secured a spot into the next round, take that one step closer because of how tight the group is. Um, it could have done them a lot of justice. But again, not the first time that we've seen, VAR make a mistake. You know, rules have to be clarified at this point. It happens far too often. Um, in my eyes, I don't like to slow down the game. I try to not, slow down the game as much as we can. But at this point, they almost need to do it like the NBA when they review a call. It's much like VAR. Announce it, and then so people understand what was called and why it was called. Yes, that does slow down the game, but at least there's clarity. Whether the right call or wrong call is made, at least there's clarity in the moment. And then obviously, like the NBA itself, I hate always constantly comparing it to the NBA, but I know a lot of NBA. I know the NBA does a lot wrong, but in terms of officiating, they do a lot right. They do the last 2 minute report. Where, if there was a wrong call, they obviously, are accountable for it and kind of say that, oh, in the last 2 minutes this call was made incorrectly, it should have been this, so there's accountability. I think people would be much happier with that. Even the team that suffered would be a little less, feel hard done by that as well.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, a lot of these or controversial calls, I wouldn't necessarily call, call them mistakes. Controversial calls are gonna hopefully um, push that narrative. Do we have to revisit the rules of the game? Do we have to put more an emphasis on sort of reading out the actual decision that was made so that it makes sense for everyone, not just the players but also the fans in the stadium? Something that could be coming in the future. But yeah, definitely some of those big calls to make, which are just accumulating throughout the season. This, of course, puts the second game that we're going to talk about much more into a well, it has a lot of effect, of course, in Group F, and of course now we're going to talk about the other game, which was AC Milan 1, Dortmund 3. Joe, you've been harping on how good Dortmund are, and honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. When this group came out, I thought Dortmund could possibly finish dead last in this group. They've proved us wrong, as you can all tell, and they've actually qualified for the round of 16 already. So Gio, what were your takes from this Dortmund performance at the San Siro?
um Look, yes, I think the whole team of Borussia Dortmund are opportunists. I think we've all kind of have to come to that agreement. They see potential in young kids and try to train them up and become great players. Opportunities that they are more than willing to take. They saw an opportunity in the early missed penalty. By AC Milan, and they never looked back. They were cooking on that left side. Uh, Bino Gittins was obviously on fire. Whoever was defending him on the left side was getting cooked. Was torched. I could smell it through the TV. It was just bad news. But all in all, I think yeah, no, they obviously saw it as an opportunity to be able to clinch a spot into the next round. Was very aggressive from the very get go. Got themselves their own penalty again. Bino Gittins getting that call. I thought Sabitzer was playing well again, as he has this past month. Actually, I think he's been playing quite well. So yeah, no, I think as a group effort, I think yes, again, they're not all stars, but by any means, obviously you look at Marco Royce and you see, oh yeah, he's had his time. He's kind of on the decline, but hey, he still consistently leads that team and consistently gets the best out of his guys. And that's what you can. That's more than what you can ask for a guy at his age, playing for this one team, for majority of his career, and then just pushing out results. So yeah, no, I'm more than happy to say that Borussia Dortmund is one of the first teams to qualify.
Yeah, yeah, Royce, it looks like he's definitely a vet compared to a lot of these young and up and coming Borussia Dortmund wingers. It looked like this match was a battle of wingers, and it just turned out to be Dortmund just had that extra quality. Whereas, yeah, like you said, Giroud had that penalty saved inside. I think it was inside 5 minutes, and really from then on, they still created some chances, but Mac they weren't really able to put it away. Whereas, you have Byron Gittins, Marco Royce putting that penalty away. Uh, I think as well you had name escapes me, the right winger that was playing for Dortmund. He had a couple of chances as well.
Mullen?
Yes, Mullen. Sorry. Mullen. They all look incredibly fast, incredibly tricky, and difficult to deal with. And I think it's just in a easy way to put it, just an older group of AC Milan players passing on the baton to a young and up and coming group of Dortmund players. What were your takes on it, though, Mac?
I'm. It's very interesting because when I'm looking at this AC Milan lineup in terms of going into a starting 11, I don't feel threatened at all. I know that again, Gio and I think you, Ray, as well, have given a lot of flowers to Ruben Loftus-Cheek for his play. I think he's had looked well in decent games. But if we compare and contrast to this year's Champions League roster to last year's Champions League roster for AC Milan, there is a sizable drop in terms of quality in the starting 11, as well as you have players that are not just past their prime like Drew was last year, I would argue, well past their prime. And the main difference would be if you look at just the group stage games from last season for AC Milan, and 5 games into this Champions League season, is that they've both conceded 7 goals. The difference would be last year through 6 games they scored 12. This year through 5 games they scored 3. So it's really been their offensive firepower that has dipped and has caused them to be in the position where they are, where I would argue they're probably the least favorite of these teams to make it out of this group, in my opinion. And even in this game, if you take a look at the shot chart, if you take a look at the chances created, they're in decent area of the pitch. They're in terms of expected goals, they actually beat Dortmund. It's just the quality in the final third because Rafael Leao didn't play in this game. Christian Pulisic can't fill his boots. In terms of Brahim Diaz, played in the center last year. Ruben Loftus-Cheek can have a good game, but he's not the same player. And a player like Tonali in midfield to create opportunities is gone. So you're seeing a large drop-off from a lot of key players that were on the team last year. Defensively, still not great, but now they're so porous offensively, so they don't have the kind of the leg room to make up for a lot of holes I find even on that side of the pitch. So even if you take a look at kind of historical context of how bad a performance this was, is that this is the first time Milan has conceded 3+ goals on home soil in the Champions League in over 12 years. So it's been this is a microcosm of kind of how things have been trending, at least how I feel about the team. Where I know going back into like the mid 2000s, we saw them as like a defensive stalwart of a team. Whereas I know football's evolved, but how they evolved has gone backwards, and it hasn't worked well for them, especially this season. And it feels like they have to have kind of a whole reset. A lot of these younger players do have to step up because if you look at their lineup, I know we're talking about kind of the older players. In terms of the starting lineup, there's only one old player over the age of 30, and that was Giroud. Everyone else is under 20, under 30. So they should be better than this. This should be their prime. So it's just, for me, it's not necessarily that. It's the lack of quality in the team, and that has to be addressed if they do have a chance of getting out, or they do have to figure out a way to be able to play better with the players they have for now. But going forward for a team, going into next season, in all likelihood, they have to make a lot of changes.
Yeah, and that being said, last 2 fixtures for this group, Dortmund host PSG and Newcastle host AC Milan. So yes, technically all 3 teams, PSG, Newcastle, and AC Milan, do have a chance of going through. But realistically, it's gonna be tough for AC Milan to go away at to Newcastle to get a result there, and then Dortmund, they probably will rest players, and PSG, you're hoping, well, you expect them to get a win at Dortmund, so it'll be tough for Newcastle and AC Milan, but we'll definitely touch on that more closer to I think it's the second week of December that they'll play those round of games. But just to round off this part of the podcast, I'll read out to you guys the group of, the teams that have qualified for the round of 16 so far. That's Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Real Sociedad, Inter Milan, Atletico Madrid, Lazio, Borussia Dortmund, Manchester City, RB Leipzig, Barcelona, Arsenal, and PSV. We're definitely going to talk about some more Champions League football in our next part. So stay with us after this break. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now, discussing the action from Group A involving Gio's team, Manchester United. They traveled away to Galatasaray and came out with a tie. Very thrilling 3-3 tie. Mistakes, great goals, and a performance of the ages from Gio's boy Hakim Ziyech to cap it all off. A lot of chaos happening, but Gio, please walk us through your thoughts from this game.
It was bittersweet. And let me tell you why. Guys, if I may, let me go on my rant. We get this every week, but I'm sad because they lost multiple leads. That in itself is very frustrating. Although I didn't want them to necessarily move on in the Champions League, to see a win is always nice. But we didn't see that. Lost, I think, 3 leads. I don't understand. I don't understand. But it came at the hands of a Mr. Hakim Ziyech, which I am a huge fan of. Which I know Mac isn't a huge fan of. So that in itself kind of warms my heart a little. I think there's definitely one person to blame here and one person only, and he goes by the name of Andre
Martial.
Sorry,
my bad. Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Yes, there were a plethora of chances near the end. When both teams were going all out attack to try to get that goal to secure 3 points in the group, but those goals allowed by Andre Onana were abysmal. Mac, you yourself have played keeper for many years. In your life, how big of a mistakes? How big were those mistakes? And how often do those types of mistakes happen? Whether it was rainy or not, with the technology, sports equipment has these days, should this even be happening? Because I'm very curious. Because at this point, it must be something the Manchester United, equipment caretakers are doing. Something has to change there. Maybe something has to change there. But I'm not sure. Please let me know.
Okay, if you want me to be completely honest, I'll take my bias aside because I do want to laugh at Manchester United because it's very fun. I'll be honest. But the first one I don't understand in terms. So the first and the third goal are 100% his fault in my opinion. The free kick, he just guessed in terms of which direction it was going because you're trying to be able to make eye contact with the ball to see how it's struck, to see which direction you go. He doesn't make eye contact with the ball. He guesses that it's going to be going across to his kind of his left. But then, of course, kind of just does the simplest free kick, puts his right as easy as you can get. He should have, and I think probably would have saved it if he just stood still. The last goal, near post. It's a great strike, but it's near post. And as a professional keeper like that, from that distance, if someone's going on near post, I have major questions. The second one, actually don't blame him as much. I blame Martial. And that's the reason why I made that joke, is because he ducks out of the header. Obviously, I'm not on the pitch. If Onana yells, keeper's ball in that situation, okay, then you know what? It's back to his fault. But if you look back, because it's one of those tough positions where it's across, it's coming very close to the keeper. If anybody makes contact on it and he's already come out to be able to claim the ball, he has no chance at saving it. So you have to wait till the last second to be able to come out to collect it. But there was nobody else in front of him to be able to do that in that situation, except for Martial. And if you look back, he actually ducks his head slightly. And as a goalkeeper, if you have a player in the outfield and a shot's coming towards you and they duck, you kind of have no shot and to be able to stop it. Again, he should have done better in that position, but I wouldn't want to lambaste him on just that one, Gio, if I'm going to be completely transparent. in the collection of Onana mistakes. That looks let's put it this way. If we were to rank it on a scale of Almunia to Loris Karius, that one is more of an Almunia. The other ones are more Karius, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Completely fair. Completely fair. Yeah, though, even with the mistakes, I don't know. At the end, though, Gio, it felt like Man U, because of course, Galatasaray did very well to at least put pressure up, even though there weren't goals that necessarily what they would have expected. They had possession, they had chances, but they ran out of gas, and it looked like at the end, if just Pellistri, Garnacho, McTominay with that shot of his, Bruno Fernandes hitting the post, any of those chances go in, it's a wrap because I didn't think Galatasaray had the legs. Yeah, it's just disappointing with, and of course with the results that took place as well. Bayern and Copenhagen drawing 0-0. This puts a lot of pressure on Man U, who have to host Bayern Munich, who have already qualified in the next game in the Champions League, and then they hope that their goal difference is enough to take them over Galatasaray or Copenhagen, whoever wins that game. So yeah, Gio, not sure what you really take away from this. Are there any positive performances from Man U and anything that could help in that Bayern Munich game? What are your hopes there?
Yeah, I definitely see some positives. Is that the game seems to be more free flowing in terms of offensively. I'm seeing more open play goals. Not necessarily scrambles, off rebounds or anything. They're creating opportunities for one another. I think there are just some great passes. Even the shot. No, there was a pass very late into the game where Dallo had a player one on one, but he made a cross field pass through a couple of players into the middle. They're finding cutters, just finding those seams again. Which for a long time Man U has struggled to do. String together, decent passes and score great team goals. And I'm sorry, and even that McTominay goal was a good team goal. A great counterattack. So, as a fan, yes, they are struggling. They're sitting, I think, what, fifth or sixth on the table now, in the Prem. Um, but yeah, no, like they're they are progressing. Although it may not seem like they are progressing, they are progressing. The opportunities that they're getting and the chances they are converting are much better than of years past. So, if we're gonna take away positives, I think that's a very big positive that we can take away is that they're creating great chances and they're putting them away. Albeit sometimes not always in the prem and it being, almost you know i- in hindsight you want to call them wasted efforts in the Champions League, because Hoyland scoring a brace, and still not being able to secure a win. Garnacho scoring another great goal, Bruno scoring from an amazing distance, scoring great goals like that, that can really like suck the air out of a stadium and suck the air out of a team, for a team not to be able to sort of kill the game and control the game. I think that's the areas we clearly need to elevate as a team.
Yeah, and it looks like Man U's form in the Premier League and Champions League are completely separate. You could argue they would, if someone were to just look at those two results separately, you wouldn't think that they were part of the same season. But of course, the season continues, and for Man U, it comes quick on Saturday. They do face, and they have to travel to Newcastle, a game that Newcastle coming off of that result at PSG, drawing in the last minute, they'll feel hard done by. So that's going to be a great game because as well, it's Man U sixth, Newcastle seventh. I think separated by 1 point currently. Just reading out the last couple of results from Man U and Newcastle. In the Premier League, at the very least, they tied 0-0 in the game in Manchester, and then Newcastle won the home game 2-0 last season. So, Mac, it's looking and leaning more towards Newcastle in terms of win probability, But what do you think will happen in this game?
I think we're going to have I think we're going to have a little bit of a brawler. I expect a very highly physical, contested game. I don't anticipate a lot of opportunities to be able to start off at the beginning of the game because both teams, I think, would realize that considering how things have kind of shaken out in the Champions League, that they're kind of way that they can have a successful season still is in the Premier League, so they might play a little bit tight. I do would necessarily lean towards Newcastle because I disagree with you a little bit in terms of the progression. For me, this team is the exact same thing as the Ole's team. I think the comparison and the transition and the reversion of back to what they used to do before is kind of a little bit scary because you will get the positives like you'll see offensively in transition situations, but you still have the same negatives in a lot of cases. So a little bit concerning there. I think the main difference would be, and where Manchester United could have a better shout is because Newcastle right now, as we talked about, at the end of this PSG game, they looked worn and ragged. And I think that their drop off to their next player that's coming off the bench that we've seen thus far this season, because they had to start back to back games, Lewis Miley, a 17-year-old in the Champions League and the Premier League. I don't know in terms if you want to be able to throw him out against Manchester United on the weekend. So if they have to make rotations, their drop off in player is going to be a degree greater than what Manchester United would experience, in my opinion, and they might have a little bit more quality to kind of cover those gaps and be able to get those opportunities from there. Overall, I think that's a very exciting game. I wouldn't be surprised because with how physical and how kind of worn out these teams already in a very busy December schedule, that either we get a very low scoring affair, maybe a 0-0, maybe a 1-1 draw, or a team kind of in some ways where completely giving up because they don't have enough left in the tank at this moment. Because, like I said, the Newcastle team were completely done and dusted by the end of the PSG game. And it seemed like in some ways, maybe emotionally, Manchester United would be a little bit exhausted coming off this tie with Galatasaray. And their future looks bleak in the Champions League, to put it nicely.
Okay, and the same exact question for you. Newcastle did beat Man U's reading here now in the EFL Cup 3-0 earlier this season. But like Mac mentioned, there are a lot of injuries to that Newcastle team. Man U will have Rashford back, and with him getting on the score sheet last game against a worn out defense that Newcastle will bring, could be a positive for Man U there. So what are your, I guess, predictions for this upcoming game?
Um, for once, I do believe that they can take this game. Again,
Oh.
if they can convert, like they have the past couple of weeks, that's going to be crucial. Starting off starting off on the front foot. Not always being the team to concede first. I think it's important they get their first goal. That will almost dictate the rest of the game. You see how fluid they can be if they're playing with confidence with the lead. And that in itself should kind of warrant them to want to play harder and try to get that lead early. But apart from that, yes, again, much like we spoke on Chelsea, seeing it as a opportunity to take advantage of a injury ridden Newcastle team. I think again it's another great week to do so. Yes, the result of that game was a little different from what we had predicted. So God willing, it doesn't happen to Man U or me and Chris are gonna have a very similar conversation, you know. But no, I do genuinely think Man U can win this game. But in it again, they need to be the one who scores first, and I think Onana needs to have sort of a brush off game. And he needs to pray it's sunny in Manchester, but in this time of the year, those days are hard to come by. So he needs to really sharpen up.
Yeah, I do completely agree with that. It'll be very interesting to see who scores first in this game because very much like Everton, if Man U score a goal early and Newcastle are forced to sort of come out, that running behind could be a long day for Newcastle just running back towards their goal. But if Newcastle score early and set up shop, the way they kill games and just break up play, I would see that as well. A long day for Man U. So very interesting game that we're gonna watch here. But I guess Another game that we're going to talk about from this weekend, Mac, is Manchester City. They will be hosting Spurs. Interestingly enough, their last four fixtures in the Premier League, Spurs won three of them, except not really by a whole big margin. All three wins that they've had are 1-0 wins. And considering the injuries that they have, the run of form that they are coming into with three straight losses, Man City, of course, are looking to be favorites to hopefully continue to push and cement themselves as of course one of the title contenders. What are your expectations from this game, Mac?
I expect Manchester City to come out and get a stranglehold in this game early and often. I would be shocked. I would absolutely be shocked if Spurs don't lose this game by more than 2 goals. I'd be astounded. I think that they have very little chance defensively. I think the way out for them, again, it goes against everything that Ange would want. But if you're playing that high line against this team, you need a very poor game from across Manchester City's midfield. You have to be able to make sure that every single time that they're trying to play that transition pass into Holland, that the offside trap is on point, it's correct. There are a few mistakes that do come up. Vicario is able to kind of stand on his head and have kind of a goalkeeping performance of his career. I think it's that dire for me when you're looking at the defensive unit that Spurs are going to put out against this attacking City threat. I think the win probability really right now has Man City by 75%. And I wouldn't be surprised if you give me an over-under on Holland 1.5 goals, I'll probably take the over, because it just seems like if you put Emerson Morale on him in the middle, how does he not like that's a free tap and header, right? That's a mistake from Emerson Royale, and then he still has the breakaway goal in him. It just seems like it's clear cut and obvious in terms of the way out. For me though, again, I would be something I brought up in our previous podcast. I think somebody that he did end up scoring in the most recent game after coming on for Manchester City in the Champions League was Julian Alvarez. I would be interested to see if he doesn't play and we finally, it's been a long time coming, but we finally see Foden in that behind the striker position with Holland instead of having Alvarez there, because then maybe the connection in the final third might be a little bit smoother with more of a naturally creative and passing like player. But the tough part is you're taking Alvarez off the pitch when on his day he's a very good footballer. So tough decisions for Pep there. But I think that they should see this game out comfortably and put Ange under a lot of pressure with 4 losses in a row.
Okay, same question to you then, Gio. Do you have any chance for Spurs to get a result given their sort of track record against City, or is this too much for them too soon in this sort of up and down season they've been having?
I know I'm a master of hot takes when it comes to giving teams credit about the possibility of getting this one. If if Postecoglou is anything that we've seen so far, and he is ballsy enough to play a high line with 9 guys, I think he is gonna go all out on this one too. And that horribly bolds and that bolds horribly in his face against him. So sorry, I think City again. Pep will play Pep ball. They will possess the ball and they will find their seams. Yeah, they will look for ways to kind of drag out this thin Spurs team. Yes, I think we agreed that the front three of Spurs can compete with the best of them. But you know they have to get the ball somehow, and I don't think the midfield or the players from the back, whether you know Bentancur came on and immediately almost got injured. Tough break for him, of course, after just coming back from injury. But apart from that, that slight glimmer of hope that he brought, it didn't. It just doesn't seem like they have anyone to provide that service for them. It's not going to be Hoiberg. It's not going to be any of those guys. So, who do they really have at that point? So, is it going to be Pedro Porro? I just don't see it. So yeah, they have a great front three, but they are going to lack a lot of service this weekend.
Yeah, Bentancur, of course, very unlucky for him. I think he's going to be out for a long period of time. And like you said, Joe, in all areas of the pitch, Man City just dominates Spurs, I think, in terms of quality. So I don't really see them having much of a chance here. So we can expect the City win, pretty comfortable win at that. And just to round off this podcast for today, let's talk about Chelsea versus Brighton. This game, I don't really know what we can expect from this. Mac labeled it as Brighton versus better Brighton, or worse Brighton versus
No, it's Chelsea
better Brighton.
versus better Chelsea. Like, the better Chelsea is
sorry.
also known as Brighton. That is without a shadow of a doubt. The bad players end up eventually going to Chelsea, if that makes sense. They're rejects in a way, if you be so kind. Maybe not so kind. That would still be rude, but still, either way. Overall, I think this game could be a lot of fun because both teams attempt or succeed in playing expensive, attractive football. One team is generally a little bit better in the final third. Let's take a wild guess on which team that is. I would love to see, again, Evan Ferguson or Joao Pedro try to be able to dominate this Chelsea back line. That's always a fun game to be able to watch. Ansu Fati's been a really good player thus far, coming in for Brighton as well. Again, there's so many fun players that you want to be able to watch for Brighton to see to do well. I hope Billy Gilmore gets on the pitch and is able to kind of be a midfield maestro against his former team. Love to see that. I think the main question for me coming into this game for Brighton is because Dunk, who got a red card for dissent, which is probably one of the worst red cards you can get, where he got a yellow and then complained and got a second yellow to immediately get sent off in the previous game, is going to be out for this matchup. So at the back, that means that Brighton are going to play without their most experienced defender. James Milner not included because he shouldn't be playing. But that puts an area of the pitch where, hey, that might be a little bit of pathway for Chelsea to go forward, where an area that they're struggling, if a team like Brighton, who concede a whole lot of goals themselves, they do score a lot, but they concede a lot of goals. Maybe this gives them a little bit of opportunity to get their feet wet. Maybe getting a couple of easier opportunities for the players up top to bag in a couple of goals potentially. I think eventually they'll still end up losing the game because if you just look at quality versus quality, there's so much more to what Brighton can offer. But I think this can still be an entertaining, enthralling game of two teams that want to express themselves. But one team feels like they're on their way, while another team feels like they're just at the beginning.
Yeah. On that note, Ansu Fati and Tariq Lamptey, I believe, just came out this week. They are set to miss an extended period of time on sidelines as well. So that's a blow for them. Though that's not necessarily the end of the world for Brighton. They'll probably go in January and sign on loan some kid from an Eastern European country, and then he's going to come out to be the next big thing. So not worried about that. Worried more so about this game, Gio. And yeah, I don't really. Though Brighton's last couple of games, I think they've tied a couple of them against Fulham, Everton, Sheffield. They did beat Nottingham Forest. I think it was late in their last Premier League game, and so you expect them to continue their decent start to the season and probably put Chelsea away. What are your thoughts, Gio?
Uh, yeah, no, I think after last week, I think Chelsea are again back in absolute shambles. I don't think they almost got close to gaining a slight bit of their identity back, and within a week, that's how harsh the Premier League can be. It gets snatched right from you from what we all know as a very undermanned Newcastle side. So yeah, I think Chelsea are coming in this game kind of nervous because they know what Brighton can do. With the players that they have. Obviously, they'll ask Caicedo, what their game plan is going to be. But even if they know their game plan, I don't think they have much of a shot. Like, bro, this guy can tell them the whole playbook. They can tell him the Zerbi's full playbook, and he's not gonna really know what they're gonna pull out. And are they? Even if they know, can they stop it? Is the most important thing. Is Matoma gonna have a field day? I don't think he's gonna have a field day per se, but I think he's gonna have a great game. So with that being said, I think Chelsea are going to be in a tough one, like another tough one this weekend.
Yeah, just reading out the last 5 fixtures between these two teams. They've tied 3, and Brighton's won the most recent 2. So based on history and in the last 5 games, not looking great for Chelsea, but we'll definitely be back covering that game in our next podcast. So that being said, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at House of _Footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, hustlefooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Tuesday when we review match week 14 of the Premier League. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Quick aside, want to let you know. So Arsenal did win 6-0, but I turned off the game as soon as Jorginho came on, so I didn't see his penalty. So I had a great day.
Thank you, Gio, for joining us tonight.
Hey, peace out, guys. Man, you suck.
See you guys soon.